Springfield's farmers in the early 19th century, mostly of Scotch-Irish descent, realized the abundant drinking water combined with a cash crop of corn would make distilled spirits of superior quality. This would later launch 50 to 75 distilleries throughout the county by the end of the late 19th century. Some would become famous, such as Pitt Brothers and Nelson's Greenbrier Distillery.
In 1903, Springfield went dry because of the Prohibition. Prohibition had started going nationwide at that time period. You could make whiskey here and ship it over the line into Kentucky. And some of our distilleries actually had warehouses and had places over like in Guthrie and in Hopkinsville. And they could not sell whiskey here, but they could sell it out of state. So we were going dry, and that's when Prohibition kicked in Tennessee. And went dry until 1933, and in 1933 it was called Out of the Woods. It means that it was coming out of the barrel again, and that's when you could make whiskey again, which could not make it in Robertson County. That's why Springfield went dry, and that's when all the saloons in Springfield closed. And they said that that was a very sad day when the saloons closed, because they didn't know really what was going to happen. But that's when the tobacco business began to really take off, and that's at the time that the Planters Protection Association started. And when it started, they primarily took the tobacco from the big market in Clarksville and brought it here. And that's why we became known as the world's finest dark fire tobacco, is because of that. It's because when the whiskey died, then they brought in the tobacco business. Primarily, whiskey and tobacco is what built this town. The saloons, they were big, they were major businesses here. But not only did they sell the whiskey out of the saloons here, they shipped it all over the country. Robertson County whiskey was shipped everywhere, especially when Charles Nelson bought Greenbrier, which did not have anything to do with Springfield, but it did in Greenbrier. It did for Robertson County whiskey. Right now, what I'm going to try to do is kind of describe where some of the buildings are, and this is in 2019, compared to where they were then, so that the people watching this will kind of understand, because a lot of them can look at the buildings and would not understand exactly where they are. One of them would be on the corner directly across from the courthouse. It's a two-story building next to the Tennessee Light and Power business, and we believe that those two businesses possibly were together. But now that was John Woodard's building there. If you look down to the side of that, you can see where they had a loading dock that was later covered up. If you go across the alley from there, you'll see a green building that belongs to Homan and Homan Insurance now, which is the Palmer family. And at the top of it it's green. The building is, and at the top of it says bank. That right there, that was Jordan Stokes Brown's building. And that was where they actually had their first liquor warehouse. That particular one was a dry goods store before that, and then they started selling whiskey in it, and that's how a lot of the whiskey ended up getting sold in these stores, because it was not against the law to sell it in a dry goods store, and that's how they did in Nashville. That's how Charles Nelson ended up in the business, because he came here to work in the dry good business and ended up selling whiskey and found out he could make more money on whiskey, so he ended up selling the whiskey there. Then you turn around and you go across the street from the courthouse at Clyde Richards' office. And Clyde Richards' office, that was where Shannon's Drug Company was at one time. McFarland and Gill's drug company was there, but that was where Pitt Brothers was at. That was one of possibly the best known saloons in Springfield, was that one. That next door to that is Jerry Converse's office, and Jerry's office, that was where Pouring Couch was. And then on the other side next to that, that's where there is an antique store today. That's where DeBerry Couch was located. Interestingly enough, Clyde Richards' building is kind of a unique story about it, because what you do is you go into Clyde's building and you go to the back of it, and that building is set to a T, and the other part of it is between the two-story, three-story building there, and that one there's a small alley, and that was where they would back the wagons up to unload at the door, and that floor is slanted, and that was done that way so they could roll the whiskey down through there.